campers, and I don't know if you reported on that to at council. I don't think you did. I think there was a conversation.
I think you and I had a brief conversation.
Exactly. And I can tell you that part of the tree situation was liability. All of those numbers are.
My recollection was at the meeting, I think you had mentioned the number at your report, about 100, and I believe that Councilor Locke said something about 200.
Yeah,
I think we could check that out.
I had no idea, really, other than I used to work in the woods, and when we'd have a jag of logs, you know, that would usually entail 35 or 40 trees, and some of the loading areas and that kind of thing.
I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago we went over there and we took out 130 trees that were rotten and dying, and there was at least 50 more then. And we had, last count, there was about close to 100 that were rotten and dying and needed to come out, that were hazard trees. So, you know, that's just kind of a relative thing if they cut 200 trees with that many over there, because those cottonwoods rot and they are very dangerous to fall, because some of them only had a couple inches of wood left in them. They're all hollowed out from the inside out is how they die. So.
Probably aged out.
Oh, they were, and there's probably still more that are hazards over there.
And that you brought up a really interesting point about the campfire going. And so when I went over there and interviewed the campground host, I said, "Well, where's the rules and regulations, and where's that?" Well, they're going to have it posted and whatever, but it would be really good to give the campers something to remind them of how to leave their campsites when they leave. And he's in charge of that. Campground host at this point. And I don't know if they're going to have 2 campground hosts as more the populace, and this gets more popular, and going forward, I have no idea. So maybe we've already talked a little about that, but I'll pass those things on to John. The what?
What happens to the trees after you cut them down?
Years ago?
No, just
Oh, now they're being chopped up into firewood.
Yeah, the last time we had the work crew go over and make firewood out of them, and then it flooded, and it all ended up in Rainier. We haven't had our meeting. We're supposed to have a meeting next week with Sue, and we're going to go over all that if she's not too busy. But even if you did place it where you have it pictured here, that's a pretty good spot, because if we have to move the bench, we can also move that. So I mean, I think it's a great thing. It's really working out well, except at Campbell Park.
All right. Okay. That's good to know that people are, are watching too. Schedule another cleanup in September, and as part of the so I wanted to get the go ahead with that, and then also I have some forms that Saul would like the city or the agency to sign granting approval for that. So I have 2 copies of this, and I guess I give them to you to pass along to whoever needs to be passed along. But basically, it looks like one of those kind of boilerplate things that you give permission for myself and volunteers to work there, and that we will you'll hold Saul harmless, Saul will hold the city harmless, so we can do that work. It's the 21st to the 28th. I should know, and let's see if I can pull that up on my calendar. Actually, I don't think I got it ever filled out officially in the past. So this is part of my my desire. It's the 21st, September 21st, from 1 to 4, and again, that's at low tide. And actually, that's if you haven't gone out to Dalton on the river, you go down from the city water filter treatment plant and head on down straight to the Columbia, where the old shipyards were. 100 years ago, they were building ships off of there, and at low tide you can still see the remnants of the rails and the blacksmith work and the like, and you can see the tracks of the heron and the beaver and the muskrat, and right now there's wonderful wildflowers going on. Anyway, but there's also a lot of trash. So, 21st, 1 to 4. Yeah. So, okay. All right, yeah, but again, I just wanted to keep you in the clear, and I know that Lynn, who's a new member of your group, she's on vacation, but she's going to come on September. I know that she's been working really hard at trying to develop this idea of Dalton Lake as a nature preserve. Did she get a chance to meet with you? Yeah, you're looking at some of the trails and the accessibility for bikes and things like that. So anyway, I'm glad that. You're back in this because even with the ODOT ownership, the city management, I think Dalton Lake is one of those jewels that, along with some of the other parks, can really increase a different type of tourism and to our community. So.
Did she share the the intergovernment agreement with you between ODOT and the city that was created in 2009?
Yes, she did. She had a bunch of information. I guess actually that Jerry Belcher had handed on to her with all kinds of information. But looking at that, and essentially it looked like that some of the, for instance, she's proposing the development of signage, and that's something that would need to be signed off on by ODOT and that sort of thing. So yes, she did.
So, this is for the Parks Commission to discuss if we want to go forward to annex that property from ODOT to the city. It should be pretty simple, I would think. And it depends on who the players are in ODOT, but. We might want to do that for control, so it isn't so bureaucratic every time that something wants to be done down there, like a sign, that we have to go through Salem and through a myriad of people to see if the sign is okay and that kind of thing. So it just makes a lot of sense we tried that years and years ago, but we kind of got stonewalled on a few issues, but ended up with the kind of the mitigated agreement, the intergovernment agreement, and I think it's a good agreement, but I think something that along the line to keep that totally in our park system would be an asset. There's also a private property on the beach area, so that's something that everyone should know as well. And I think it comes back about 50 to 75 feet from the water. The private property has a slice going all the way almost to Columbia City, and that was not a surprise to me. I knew that there was a sliver in there, but I didn't realize it was that wide. She can show you everything.
Yeah. Oh, I've gone to the county and the maps and checked out all the property information. And as a matter of fact, though, I think the the parks master plan in its appendix includes some of that information, and that is actually something Lynn had hoped to do before she went on vacation, but didn't. But we're going to do was to go down there and just maybe using some brightly colored little plastic ribbon or tape to maybe tie on some of the branches and things to delineate where that the ODOT property is and where the private property is, especially along that beach area. And that is something we're going to be very much aware of when we do the cleanup down at the lake, is stick to the ODOT. Okay. Yeah, the Brownlow.
Exactly.
But still, it's going to be under private ownership, yeah. So,
How would we then, do we need to ask the city to annex that, or is that premature to say there would be an?
No, I mean, the city has to go into negotiations with ODOT, and that gets to be that gets to be quite intense. And there's a lot of give and take in terms of what the goals are and what the mission is and what the city's going to do. And that's all with city staff, that's all with John's group, John Walsh, and he would spearhead those efforts. And Jen probably as well. Not until you talk about it, until we deliberate on it. And it was just kind of a heads up from my point of view. So we'll have it on the agenda at some time, possibly, when we do a little more studying and find out the ramifications and find out if it's possible, and then also find out somewhat if the city council is open to it.
It's been so open-ended for so many years. You get some
Yeah,
stories to be great.
it has been.
In that one family for all.
Thank you.
See you then, Pat.
All
Thank
right.
you, Patrick.
Yep.
Next up, we have Friends of Program Guidelines.
So there is a 2-page document in your packet, and I believe Sherry included another document on one page that is some additional notes that you had worked on in the past. So it was requested to come up with a program guideline or outlines of how to properly do a Friends of program for any of the parks in our community. So staff obviously stole some things from other governments, just like we all do, and put some comments and something at least on paper to give you some framework ideas. What I'm here today is to show you those framework ideas and the outline of what a guide may look like if somebody were to go online and print off a PDF of this. I will tell you that since I sent this to Sherry last week or so, in between then and now, Jenny Dimshow and Crystal Farnsworth have been reviewing this and making a plethora of edits and changes. So what I'd like to do is just get a general consensus of that you like this kind of outline and guidelines. And what I'd like to do is take the additional information that I have today from what you have discussed in the past. We will look through that and add that into this guideline, and potentially, I believe, should be able to bring this to you at the next meeting to officially approve an actual program and outline of how to start a Friends program, to let others in the communities know if there is an interest. Then this gives them guidelines and directions of how to operate and what they should and shouldn't do.
So this is homework for a bit till we talk about it.
Yes, this is definitely homework. If there is something that you see on here that you think should be listed and isn't, or if there's something on here that we copied from another city that makes no sense for St. Helens, feel free to make those comments as well, and you can email those to me directly, and I'm happy to take those comments and give them to Crystal and Jenny, and we will bring you back a more finalized document at your next meeting.
So I have an idea about how the process works. And in the process, how the Parks Commission is uniquely suited to work in the process. And I strongly feel that the Friends of, whoever heads up the Friends group, needs to be either a part of this commission to oversee the Friends or develop a partnership with Friends. A perfect case in point would be Patrick and Lynn working together at Lynn's discretion. But Lynn would be the piece to report of what's going on with the Friends of Dalton Lake Nature Preserve. And so I think it would work very effectively that way. And that way we also have a link to the council as staff could report, or I could report to the council in my report. So everyone knows what's going on, and there are links all the way through. So that's my only concern of how it can function, rather than the Friends group coming around and going straight to the council and saying, hey, we need $100 for this or whatever. I'd like to see that work through the Parks Commission. And so we have our Parks Department here, and it's all talked about, and it's all transparent, and it's in the open. And I think that's extremely important. So that's my 2 bits.
Any other comments?
I agree. I think it makes sense. I think it would be nice to have this on the site, and then also once we have like confirmed friends groups, have those listed on the site and a contact person as well, so that it's really easy to see which parks have friends of groups already established. Next up, softball field.
So before we get to that topic, I wanted to bring up just 2 quick things real quickly since I'm here. We had a instance this last week where on our park use application currently, there is a small section at the very top that says if you are a 501c3, you bring in a letter from the IRS and you can get park fees waived for being a 501c. We have the Lions Club that is a 501(c)(3)B. So I've had Kathy, our city recorder, check everywhere through our policies and everything. This is not an official policy, so to speak, that was approved. It was just something that was put on the form. So what I'd like to see if you are okay with is taking out the word 501c3 and just replacing it with tax exempt entity. And that way, if somebody is a 501(c)(3)B or 3C or whatever, as long as they provide a letter from the IRS showing that they are a tax exempt agency, then they would still be able to waive park use fees.
Do we have people utilizing that now? Like how many applications do we get in where that's actually checked?
Well, I can tell you that some of the groups that are concerned, that would be veterans, Boy Scouts, Lions Club, Kiwanis, the Elks when they're doing a something for their eye bank, or anyone who's doing some kind of situation that way. So that's the kind of the ones that are an issue who are not in the IRS system, because they are nonprofit, and maybe the word nonprofit and or tax exempt could be utilized, but I'm not certain. But I know the veterans especially would be, make this. So I talked to John about this, and this was really interesting because John says, whatever you guys come up with, and if anyone really wants to go beyond what, and they don't fit on this form, just come talk to me, and he'll make up the decision at that point, and he'll have a history of if it's Boy Scouts or if it's whoever, and especially if one group really screws something up, he'll know, and then he'll make that decision at that time. So I said, well, I'm okay with that. That sounds pretty good. So he's always there to fit in the flexibilities and anything that's kind of like rolling around, he can fix on the spot. So I like that. And I told him I liked it. So it's I don't know where this is going to go, and it's kind of up to you guys and Matt. And I really appreciate you coming in and talking about that.
I'd like to see it maybe tax exempt 501c3s or Ds or whatever it is, may have their fees waived upon approval by the city administrator and or city council.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if it's gonna be
Rather than
evaluated.
have been a blanket, if 501c3 gets their, it could be the 501c3 group that wants to use Sparks.
Well, yeah, and you put yourself in the Lions Club shoes. They wanted a picnic, and they wanted to waive the picnic fees for the permit, And they maintain the trail in McCormick Park, and they do that extremely well, and they've been doing it for years. So the deal comes back, why charge someone who's maintaining the park? And John can sort all that stuff out in a moment's notice. So all they have to do is not come down here and see if they could take a quick minute of John's day and meet with him or give him a phone call or whatever. It should be pretty simple. I think that's a great, John, you brought that up, didn't you? Yeah.
I move that the city may move, may, may waive park usage fees upon signature from the city administrator or
All those, or so we have a second, and all those in favor? Opposed?
So just one more thing that I want to bring up before we get on to softball fields. And that's just an idea that I want to throw out to you to consider and think about. And I know Doug has brought this up in the past, but about future master plans for all the parks. We're at a pretty good point right now, and I'm sure Thad can fill you in on any of the specific details of a lot of the park projects that are going on right now or are due to be done within the next year or so from that $500,000 that was given to the Parks Department. What I'd like to at least throw out to you and consider is staff is interested in working towards doing master plans specifically for each park. I know Doug has talked to you specifically about doing Gray Cliffs and getting down some of your ideas and thoughts for Gray Cliffs Park as well as all of the other parks. We've done somewhat of a master plan for Campbell Park to be used for a grant request that we're going for the state. And we're looking at doing another one for McCormick, which is obviously the largest park, and then we have Columbia View Park and all the other ones. But a lot of the projects that are in the 2015 master plan are the ones that are feasible comfortably, should be done in the next couple years or so. So it could be time to consider thinking of looking at doing master plans for other parks to see what future improvements and what things you want to do in the future vision of the Parks Department. And that goes along with staffing as well as funding and all those other ideas.
So that's really cool because you've picked up with what the Parks Commission has developed into individual reports on individual parks that you're responsible for. And I think some of you are really set a good precedent on what the needs are in the future for those parks. I know our nature parks are pretty well covered, and I know our ballparks are pretty well covered in many senses of what we need in each of those, so that when it comes time to look at really designing master plans, we should all be here at the table, and we should all remember what we reported on so we can go forward with that. And I see that working very effectively with this group. I'm impressed with your reports. And so I think that's really a good point to, now we need to get something on paper so it can actually happen. And as you know, the council will look at the master plan before they make a decision on whether we go that direction or not, because it's as a team, as we work with the staff, if that's what we utilize for an agreement between the staff and the council. So it's your baby. So what you have in terms of your ideas for your individual parks that you're responsible for might become a reality in a year or two. We what?
So you have the 2015 master plan that does list out of a bunch of things. A considerable amount of those things that are feasible, like for instance, redoing the bathrooms at Campbell Park that was recently completed. But there are projects on there like $1 million for an amphitheater on Columbia View Park. Okay, it's great to put in there, but it may not be feasible in the next 10 years. So, re-looking at some of those project lists with that $500,000 of the things that we can knock off, as well as using some system development charge funds that we have available now, because we have some large apartment complexes that are coming in. Those apartment complexes pay system development charges. So the large one that's going across Highway 30, just for instance, that gave you an additional $280,000 in system development charges just for that complex. Now, system development charges are very specific in what you can and cannot spend them on, and it ties directly to the master plan and how the parks are laid out and what type of park there is versus a pocket park versus a neighborhood park versus a nature park. There's all sorts of different classifications, and how the current inventory is put in on that list determines what you can and cannot spend its system development charges on. So there's some tweaking that we would like to do as staff as far as classifications. And in 2015, it may have made sense to have this park classified this way. But in 5-10 years or so, like take 6th Street. If the dream is one day, it'd be great to have 2 turf fields that people can play baseball on or softball and do football on that field. That would be fantastic. But then that really changes, if that is a vision in the future, then that really changes the classification of that park from what it is now. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. The key to having a master plan and a set list of projects, that makes it a lot easier for us to go for grants and other funding opportunities that we may see in the state or regionally.
You might note also that we don't have a full, basically, scope of the project for Columbia View Park. Because that's
Correct.
We also haven't done anything with the area along Milton Creek up on the Boise property.
Correct.
Correct.
At least in an RV. We also have property that's never been really decided what's going to be done with out on Millard Road and also on Ross Road.
So
They could have parks.
that's part of the discussion of what we're having right now with city staff and council is that Millard Road property. There's some easement issues that we're trying to get a master plan done for like a little small park so we don't lose access to an easement that was dedicated to us many years ago. But that has brought up discussions of, we know in the master plan there was supposed to be a big park in that area somewhere up there. Whether that is Millard Road property, whether that is more of a partnership with the school district on the Ross Road property that we have, and St. Helens School District has some property up there. And so there's a lot of ideas mulling around of where that park could go. But as of right now, in your 2015 master plan, it's Millard Road, and that's the park. That may not be the current vision. That may have been the vision back in 2015, but there's a lot of things that have changed. So there's a lot of partnerships that have grown, especially with the school district, that we may be able to do something different. So the master plan process is about looking at those opportunities and ideas and identifying them at least in a paper plan that staff can actually look at for direction on where to go.
We made a recommendation at the Millard Road that perhaps a senior assisted living facility with a park at the end down by the creek.
Mm-hmm.
And the school district acquired property during the whole thing.
Yep.
It's a long story that nobody can tell.
Oh, trust me, I've done my research on that hospital fiasco. The city gets blamed for that a lot, so trust me, I've done my research.
A lot of property afterwards.
Yes.
Jacob, did we answer your concern or your?
Well, we have a master plan, but we were given like a list of all the stuff that's gonna be happening. But that was based off of the master plan, but now that all of those things got approved and are happening, I think the thought is to update the master plan or have a new master plan.
Correct.
Based on where we're gonna go once those updates have been made, is that right?
That is correct.
And I think that makes sense, cause we're knocking a lot of stuff off the list. So, and it will have been, by the time that actually gets implemented, I imagine it would be about 5 years.
Yeah, master planning is not a short process, so just the fact that we're thinking about it now means maybe we'll get to it next year and so on and so forth. So, okay. So the next item on the agenda, if you're okay moving forward, is the softball fields at Boise. So I had brought this to you several months ago, and the time now has come to where the agreement that has been made with Jeff Kroll, who's here tonight, I'm sure can answer any questions and may have comments of his own to say about this. So there is a lease agreement in place right now to lease those 3 fields that are around the rec center. And when I had approached the Parks Commission several months ago, the idea and thought process at the time was that you did not want to have those leased anymore, basically as exclusive use leases, and you wanted to open those up for the community and the reservation system that we are moving towards online, so people can reserve those fields and use them as needed. So I approached the same idea and question with the city council. They agreed with what was said of the Parks Commission a while ago, but now's the time to move forward on that. And so I'm rechecking in with you. I did talk with the city council at the last meeting, and they are still on the same thought process. So I am just double checking with you as the Parks Commission if that is still your wishes to not renew any kind of lease and take those into the city's inventory and have them be reservable online like every other facility.
Are there new concerns coming up around that? Is that why we're being asked to talk about it again? Or
We've had a few discussions between myself and Jeff over the softball group, potentially one day partnering with the rec center. That may or may not happen. And use of the fields is at a premium these days. So just having more inventory available for other teams and community members that want to rent facilities was the reason it was brought up to not renew the lease. The other thing to consider, which is not part of the Parks Commission, is that entire Boise property is considered industrial. So at any time, we potentially could have someone come in and say, hey, I want to put an industrial building right there. And it's very cumbersome if there is already a lease in place to move forward on any kind of industrial improvements in that area, because it is very likely that those fields will go away in the future, just because of the development that is planned in that area. So not having a lease opens more opportunities up in the future. It's Jeff Kroll in the softball group that's had a lease in place with Boise when they were here for the softball group to be used.
should we hear from Jeff? Is that something we can do?
I think that's up to you as
We want to hear their perspective. Jeff, do you want to come up and talk?
Are we just gonna talk about that portion now, or are we gonna talk about, is that gonna run into,
Is it also related to the,
yeah, our other things next? If so, then I'll have,
well, let's talk about the softball fields at Boise right now and keep it at that, and then we can.
okay. So, my name's Jeff Kroll. I'm the president of St. Helens Girls Softball. Been with the league 13 years coaching, been president going on my 6th year now, was vice president before that. Been involved in this program and coached other programs in the community for a lot of years. Because my oldest daughter liked softball, I got more involved in it, and it just kind of grew from there. It's pretty much been my life. In the past, our league has had a year-to-year lease with Boise White Paper over there for those fields, and in return, we maintain the fields 100%. We take care of them. We do everything. And so in 2014, we negotiated a 5-year lease with them, which ends October 31st of this year. And I would like to, regardless of anything, I would like to submit a new lease proposal, essentially an extension. And there is, and has always been, an opt-out clause for the lessor, which is now the city of St. Helens, was Boise. And there always has been an opt-out, that the lease could be terminated with a 90-day written notice if something was going to be done with the property, built there, or, you know, whatever. That gives 90 days is roughly about the length of our season. So if something happened, you know, we have 90 days to figure something else, you know, another place for these kids to play ball. Not a lot of time, but at least it's manageable. So I don't know who gets the lease. I don't know if you guys all want a copy or if this goes to John as well. You're right, I understand that. And this, essentially what I did is this lease was drawn up by Boise's, their attorneys, and I replaced all of the Boise white paper, or, you know, stuff with City of St. Helens. And there, you know, on our amendment was the section that reads, lessor has the right to cancel lease at any time with 90 days prior written notice to lessee. And so I put that onto this, was the original 2012 version that I have. So I would, I'll have a couple copies. Do you want to get that
Yeah,
to
I'll-
John? So the reason being is our league, we are a nonprofit, 501c3. We have always kept our rates, our fees, registration fees, as low as possible, because we want every child to have the opportunity to play. And we understand that some parents are in a situation they can't pay a lot. Our league used to have scholarships where we would, if there were a few people that just absolutely couldn't afford to pay, we would scholarship them in. We transitioned away from that because the last year we did it, we had 17 kids who applied for scholarship, and the league had never, to my knowledge, ever turned anybody down. So what we did in lieu of that was offered people the opportunity to sell additional raffle tickets in lieu of paying the fee to register, which has worked out great. It does cost the league, you know, a little bit of revenue, but at least these kids are getting to play. The scholarship. Right. So we have a registration fundraiser that every kid has to sell. It used to be candy bars. We transitioned away from that in 2013, 2014, for a registration raffle. And we raffle off a $5,000 trip to anywhere, and every kid is responsible to sell minimum of 5 tickets. They can sell more if they want. If they sell an additional 15 above and beyond their 5, they don't have to pay for registration. That way, this gives them the opportunity when their parents say, I just don't have the money. Because it's not just the and $80 is about an average registration fee, because T-ball 8U or lower, they start at $75, and then we go to $85 for 10 and 12, and we go to $100 for 14/16 if we have a 16U team, and we haven't had one for a while. Then we offer a $10. This year we had 15 teams. We've had yes, T-ball through 14U. Roughly, you know, we start practicing the end of March. Our opening day is the end of April, and we play through the middle, usually parade day or the week after, even sometimes in June. So we, you know, that period of time, you know. But now for the Boise fields, it's a little different than Campbell. Now, we've always done exclusive use permits, which I'd like to clarify that just because somebody has an exclusive use permit with the city, it doesn't mean anybody else can't use those facilities. It means that if the holder comes to the facility and says, hey, we have a permit, you know, we're gonna have to ask you to step off or whatever, then that's what that means. But people use the fields all the time. We have never kicked anybody, to my knowledge, never kicked anybody off a field, haven't had to. So there's been times when I would like to have had the ability to close fields, but not within my power. I know Thad has seen some of the damage done by some of the people that just don't care and make the fields unplayable. I have pictures. I wish there was a way that I could hook this up and show you guys pictures of what the field looks like during our season and what it looks like when people don't care about it. It's night and day. Our grass during our season, our grass looks like a putting green. We don't have, obviously we raised money, bought a tractor with a nice finishing mower. The city doesn't have one. You got mulchers that leave hay rows all over the field, and it looks horrible, and not to mention can be a safety issue with, you know, tripping on piles of grass. Basically back to the part about the lease itself, we've never had to pay to use those fields, and we've always paid to use Campbell Park because we need the ability to sell concessions, because we keep our fees low enough, you know, that people can afford to play. That won't get us through the season, not even close. We rely on money from concessions to, you know, pay umpires, pay garbage, pay fees, licenses, to, you know, equipment, balls, everything. And there's so many things that go into running this league. It's so expensive, and people just don't understand. I didn't understand until I got involved on the board side of it. I was shocked. No, we paid $1. You have to, for a lease, you have to have some sort of transfer of money. So
Is that the concern that going from the lease to the reservation system is more, it's gonna cost the league more money? Is that the concern?
with the
Concern
new,
with timing?
there's two concerns. One would be that if every person in town, you know, decides, let's go down and tear up the fields. We're, you know, going to go do this or that, or play on them, or ride our bikes on them, or use them for dog parks and all that stuff. These fields are going to get tore up. I cannot go down and it's hard for me to do it. During our season, I spend dozens of hours, literally. This year, I saw Little League teams out practicing at Campbell Park after I got done doing it, after it had poured down rain. I have pictures of the field here. Absolutely. And there's even signs that say no hardball playing. It's a public park. People go use those whenever.
Is the lease gonna change, my thought is the lease gonna change that because it's exclusive use, but people can still go and use it when they're not there, right? So does that make,
People can use it. We are not allowed to permit, no, we have never been allowed to permit other people to use it. So we can't say, hey, you know, if you want to go play here, go play here. We can't do that. But if people did it, it is what it is. It's not our, you know, it's not our deal. As long as people aren't tearing stuff up, if they're vandalizing stuff, and we've had vandalism down at Boise. Our snack shack's been, you know, attempted to be broke into several times. We've had all, you know, some other things, people driving on the fields, tearing them up, doing wacky stuff, you know, kids. It happens. But the sheer amount, for instance, baseball, softball, they have their fields they use and play on. We have ours. We stay off of each other's stuff. You know, it's never been an issue until this year. And so what happened was for the past 5 or 6 years, I've gotten the fields ready for the high school as well for, you know, 4 years, excluding this year, the 4 years prior, maybe 5 actually. We put them on our exclusive use permit because the JV and JV2 don't have fields at the high school. They have to use Campbell Park. And one year I noticed that the school was getting charged at the same time we had already paid for it. And so it was kind of like double dipping, I guess, and whatever. It's, you know, so my recommendation was, hey, why don't we we'll add you to our exclusive use lease. We always worked around the high school and said, obviously high school comes first, even though it's our exclusive use permit. You know, we never kicked them off fields. We always, and I did the field work. I made sure those fields were ready to go. This year I went out and I did that and I got it ready. March, I could tell you, in early March, March 4th, I went out and I got all those fields ready. Got all those fields ready and dialed in for the high school to use so they could start their season, because even though I'm not affiliated with the high school, it's rather embarrassing to have other high schools come in to our park, our town, and see the fields looking like what they look like when I don't fix them up. It's embarrassing. I have heard many comments. In fact, this year, I sat there and watched opposing team coaches out there taking pictures of the field because there were some water issues on it that, you know what, that happens when people don't rake and take care of the fields and stuff, if I don't have time to go out and do it. So I go out and I fix this, and then the next week, and the fields are still in great shape, the next week it starts pouring down rain. And this was on a Friday. Saturday, there's a Little League team out there, out practicing. But we couldn't stop them.
So I guess my question is, what we're talking about now is going from the lease of the softball fields to going to a reservation system, right? And so, is that right? So, but the issues that you're having, it sounds like are kind of different issues of people going and playing and messing up the park.
If Boise is opened up to, and it's a free-for-all, those fields are gonna be tore up so bad that they're gonna be unplayable for us even. I won't be able to keep up with it.
You could still reserve the fields for what you need.
If you guys do have the permit, you can always say, hey, we have the permit, include that.
Yeah, I understand that.
This gives you guys the power to do that, though, use the permit.
And the only time that we would ever do that is if we had a structured practice go, you know, there's a team going to practice or there's a game.
You see someone misusing your field, though.
Well, they can't, Jake. Actually, it's a public park, and if they are scheduled to say practice at 5 o'clock and somebody's there at 3, they can't do anything about it.
Someone's there at 5, they don't have the practice.
That then,
Permit for that day.
yeah, if they have the permit for that day and that time, they can ask them to leave. But if they're just a public person, since it is a public park, anybody can use it, and that's an issue everywhere. And they have that with adult softball too, because we'll do the lines and stuff, and then a bunch of kids will come in and mess up the lines. But that's just part of the game.
See, there's the ability to lock.
They do during the day. They're on there during the day. Well, yeah. Well, they shouldn't unless they're not using them.
So the lease, basically the lease did was it guaranteed our kids a place to play. Without that, we don't have T-ball 8U, 10U. If we don't have that, we can do a reservation system. However, Little League starts before us, and it's my understanding, and I could be speaking out of turn, it's my understanding that T-ball fields at McCormick are going to be reduced to 1 maybe eventually. No?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so someone else was giving me faulty information, but I heard I heard that one was going away and a soccer field was going back there. And, okay, so that doesn't matter then, because my instant thought was, okay, well then it looks like the city's gonna start having Little League T-ball playing over at Boise.
I know Little League lost the middle school, but the juniors that played there now play at the high school on our fields. That's the only field I know that the Little League has lost.
We've had an agreement for years that the softball fields are softball fields. Baseball fields are baseball fields. You don't practice softball in the baseball fields, and you don't practice baseball in the softball fields. And we've done that, and it's worked out for years. It's worked out. And of course, you always have new people coming in that don't understand that. And I've had to talk to a few to get them to understand, look, this is the way it is, and we don't want to do this without permission. You know, if you get permission from their league to go out here and play on their field, then okay, well, we'll accept that. But for the most part, we try to keep them separate.
Yeah, I think it just, there was one year they were practicing out in Columbia City, and one of our teams went way, way, way to the other end, and they weren't even close to anybody, and we're just hitting some fly balls and stuff out in the grass. They couldn't possibly have been in the way, and the Little League coaches went down and said, "You guys got to get off this field. It's our field." And it's like they weren't totally not in the way, and they said, "But you're a distraction to our team." Okay, so our one of our teams left. It wasn't us. It wasn't me. I didn't know until after it had happened, and then one of the Little League board members said something to me. So I went to all of our coaches and I said, "Do not go use Little League fields. Period. Go somewhere else. Find some grass somewhere if you need to hit, fly balls or work just throwing." Hitting off the tee, stuff like that. Just leave their fields alone, and if they do the same, everybody has their place that they play. There should be no issue with this, and there's not an issue. And like I said, there have been several times, trust me, I've spent thousands of hours, and that's not an exaggeration, thousands of hours working on fields, and I've seen people a lot of times. I never go and say, "Hey man, these aren't your fields, get off them." Never. So the lease versus not, if we have a, understanding with the city, and actually, quite honestly, I think we can save a lot of time there. I know we still need to discuss, is there a way that the rec program can help our league, or is it our league helping the rec program, or is it a mutual thing? There's that discussion too. However, since you guys just voted to have the potential for 501c3s to have fees waived. So
What I was gonna ask about is if we go away from non-exclusive use permit, which is what we had suggested to the city council before, and go towards the reservation system, then that would be the method that you guys prefer for fields, right? Would be going through the reservation system used for everything else. And what we just talked about is there is that clause on these forms saying you can basically apply to have your fees waived if you're a nonprofit. Does that stand for reservations for these groups as well?
Technically, that would be then up to the city administrator to waive those fees based on. Normally, in the past, from my knowledge, for teams that use the fields, we have not waived fees. For this particular instance is for park areas and not field reservations. That's my assumption of what this form has been used for in the past. But that's probably a point of clarification, though, that if Jeff's Kroll Group is a nonprofit, putting this on the application, and it may have not have come up because what Jeff Kroll and other groups in the past have filled out a exclusive use permit and not a park use application, so they probably haven't seen this form. So now that's coming.
So
And that's down the line. If we take that same logic, we can put it over to Sand Island as well. I mean, if someone wants to use Sand Island and they're tax exempt, well, are we going to ask Brad to waive their fees? So there's a flexibility, I think, with our city manager to work those kinds of things out. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but.
Well, what I understand that with the lease in place, a lot of people who play baseball, who play softball, who play whatever, and just a lot of people in town know about that lease. And that may keep some of those people away. If you go out and say, hey, guess what, people, now you can go over to Boise and use those fields however you want. Play soccer on them, play football on them, do whatever on these fields, and they start tearing them up. That's going to be the issue. We haven't had that big of an issue. We've had, like I said, there's been some vandalism and stuff, things that we have done. So we have done, there have been times when I know I've seen Thad over there working and cutting grass occasionally on ball fields when he's been doing, you know, the surrounding area from Old Portland Road back, you know, to our fields and stuff. And that has happened. But other than that, we've maintained those for years and years and years at our own expense, at our own time. And, you know, when you talk about how much time and stuff we're putting in, we've put in a lot of time and a lot of money into, we paid $5,000 of our own money to level field 2 over at Campbell a few years back because it flooded. And when it was flooded, we weren't able to use it even during the times that we paid for it. And so I have pictures of that too, being all flooded, what it looks like, if anybody's interested in seeing. My thing is as president and, you know, our other board members and our members concerned and and past board members want to see this thrive and continue on. We want to make sure that we have a place for our girls to play ball and boys. We have had some boys playing in T-ball. So we just want to make sure they got a place to play. And, you know, I think I also agree, because I'd said something, you know, about some type of a discount on exclusive use permits in the past for all the work we do. And it's not just time, it's real money. You know, we went out and bought a $15,000 tractor to work on fields because we had nothing. And the city Parks has what, 1.5 employees? And anybody else there is from Public Works, and they have no budget. It's coming out of the general fund. There's no time or manpower to maintain the fields. That's a full-time, if you had a full-time employee, 40 hours a week, starting one field and going up through softball and through Little League and soccer and whatever else fields, by the time they got to the last one, it's time to start over and go back around and keep going. That's a full-time job.
We've talked about that as a commission, the fact that we're rich in parks, but we're poor in manpower. We don't have enough manpower to maintain and do everything. We brought that up before, that's not, I would say it's not specific to just the ball field, it's specific to all parks in general.
It's been an issue since those fields were built. Field 1 was built in the late 60s, and Field 2 was built in 1975.
I think it was 72, wasn't it?
No, it was 72, when I built it, that was 1975.
Oh, okay.
And the women's league almost put the lights in Field 2, and then we already got lights in Field 1. They originally played 6th Street. Field usage has always been an issue. People tearing up the fields has always been an issue. He's always been put in every year. I sympathize with you, because I do feel more than one thing. And I know Thad's been out there before. So we used to have tournaments every weekend. Usually 16 to 20 tournaments a year on those fields. So it's an issue, and I empathize. Personally, I think the new system is something we're trying. I think maybe the answer to this might be, and I don't know the complete answer, but maybe we had some little sandwich boards that said field reserve stay off, and put them on each field after they're repaired.
But if it's not truly
After they're prepared, yes. If you left the sandwich boards out there, Jeff knows as well as I do, they just disappear. You know,
You
that's,
talk
What-
about
Jeff, on the average, how many participants do you have on a team?
on a team,
Yeah.
it varies from 10 to 15. We did have 3 teams this year with 15. That's too many for a team, but we range anywhere from 150 to 200. I think this year we were at 100 and close to 170 ish, something like that. So I mean, it's a substantial amount of girls. We have taken our league, and as you probably know then, and I know Thad knows, and I know Mindy knows because she was on our board years ago and coached in our league, and understands that where our league was, and there was, trust me, I know what you're talking about because I grew up and 40 plus years ago I was terrorizing the town on my bicycle. Yeah, right? Like Paul does now. And so yeah,
It's just a three-wheeler.
I can't ride a bike anymore. But there wasn't a night that you couldn't go over to Campbell Park and there wasn't some kind of a game going on. There was men's fast pitch, slow pitch, women's fast pitch, slow pitch, youth ball, tournaments, tournament ball, and co-ed ball. And it was just night after night after night, and there were tournament after tournament. And so for the last 3 years, I've had the Oregon USA Softball Commissioner begging us to host tournaments here in town. And then 2 years ago, the NAFA director started asking us to host tournaments as well. We hosted one of our own local tournaments last year this year and one last year, just to allow kids who don't get to play tournament ball ever because they're not on that caliber of a team a chance to go and play for a trophy. And it was very successful. Tournaments, next year we want to do 3 tournaments, one at 10U, one at 12, and one at 14, and bring people from out of town. This year we had Castle Rock was here, we had a Scappoose team, we had, we had our 3 teams, and then we had a Longview team, and they had a blast. It was lots of fun. Best money in the world is out-of-town money, and we can bring money in by hosting these tournaments because they're not just buying concessions at the park. They're buying gas, some are staying in hotels, some are camping.
And
Yeah.
the biggest point is the better the fields are, the easier it is to bring teams in. John knows this. He's been involved with tournament ball forever, and we always wanted to play on nice fields, and so that's where we'd go, is to play on nice fields, and it brings a lot of money. And like John said earlier, we had tournaments every weekend at Campbell. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, does the city make any money off of a tournament, or is that all one 501(c) and there's no money there at all?
Right now they've been on exclusive use permits.
I believe in the adult section, I think they have to pay $10 a team or something. I think they have that stipulation for the adults.
There is on the fee schedule a $10 per team tournament fee. Whether those fees have been addressed in the past when tournaments have been held, I'm not sure.
And
They
it must,
haven't with us, I'm not aware of that, so I have no issue paying $10 a team. It's not even that. If the city wants to even get involved in hosting some tournaments, great. That's great. There's, we sat down there a couple months ago, going down one of the NAFA tournament lists on a weekend. They brought in $38,000 just in entry fees alone. That doesn't include the concessions, and what they take out of that is umpires, balls, trophies, and the money it costs them to use the fields. There's a lot of money in this. I cannot tell the head guy of USA Softball Oregon that we'll host tournaments when I know darn good and well teams will come here, they will look at this, and it'll be the last time they come to St. Helens to play ball.
But is that because of the exclusive use permit or reservation?
Because the
Right
shape
now
of the
we're talking
fields.
about the-
it's,
So what, if we can apply to have our fees waived with the understanding that we will still go and work those fields, drag the fields, cut the grass, because we had no problem doing that. That's why we bought the tractor, that's why we bought the drags.
Paying for the reservation.
Money is the second concern. I can,
While you're maintaining the field.
correct, money is the second concern. A place to play is the #1 priority.
Still be available via the reservation system.
Right, right. And then the money is secondary. If I have to tell parents, hey, look, sorry, we gotta raise rates because we have fees with the city that have tripled in price, then that's so be it. That's just the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. It will probably keep some kids from playing, because
We don't wanna discourage people from playing.
not
We're
discourage
just trying to,
financially.
as a commission, and correct me, speak up you guys, I think we're just trying to get everything on the same system. So instead of having all these different permits and leases going on, we want like one system for all our parks, for all the things. So you would, instead of having the lease for the exclusive use, you would go to a reservation, you would do the reservations for what you need, and then as far as the fees, that would that be something you think, Matt, that could be discussed?
As far as waiving the fees, so I will caution you, even being a nonprofit, that you open the door to so many possibilities of everybody in every single league never paying for a single use fee again because we want kids to play. And I understand, I have kids who play sports as well, and I hate paying registration fees and $60 to play soccer and $90 for gymnastics every month. And trust me, I hate freaking fees. Okay, but my worry is that one, you open Pandora's box, and two, when you have a leasing agreement, you again open Pandora's box for another league to come in and say, hey, I use 6th Street, we want those fields exclusively, and we want to pay $1. So then we continue to have no money at all, even the very little that you do have, to put towards future improvements that you do want to do. So, and that was the reason for the discussion earlier when we talked about raising fees and raising them from $10 per day to a $5 per session. And then some of the more advanced parks that we have, which would be McCormick and Campbell, those at $10 per session. And the thought behind that from all of you was to raise additional fees for improvements down the road to help pay for those. Because if we keep collecting $1, we're never going to get anywhere.
I don't know if you saw the middle school before they tore it down that field.
Oh, yeah.
I know they did that. I know when they got that little playable. I know when it looked like a major league field almost.
This time.
It looked better than our high school field.
Yeah, this time, Jake, because we did it way back when we did it too. We went in there and tore it all up and rebuilt it. Yeah.
I think we need to make a decision. We've
See.
been talking about this for a while, and just all of our stuff on the agenda, so I feel like we need to make a recommendation on something. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Can I ask a question? Yeah. So, come on up. Can you come to the microphone?
My name is Mindy Sass. I'm a resident of Warren, Oregon. In looking at the lease and the way the lease had been in the past, it said that the lessee shall at all times take good care of the demised premises. So when it goes to the reservation system and the pay for fee system, is the Parks Commission or whoever pays for the maintenance willing to take over the maintenance at the Boise Fields that St. Helens Girls Softball has exclusively been doing?
So I can touch on that from past discussions that you guys have had, is that it was discussed in the Parks Commission as well as the City Council that the park staff, which would be Thad and his crew, as well as Public Works and the Public Works Director, Sue Nelson, would basically describe and outline what a feasible field for our current staffing is, and it would be kept at that level. And that if there is any other groups outside Little League or softball or anything that level is not acceptable to you, you are welcome to do additional work on top of that, but the city will not reimburse you any time or funds for that because we do not have that.
Well,
That
we
was the
can't do.
discussion earlier.
Jeff is basically taking care of Campbell and Boise Fields and has saved our bacon many times because without him, we wouldn't have them looking the way they do. Now, we basically can mow them, and that's about it. We do have an agreement with the adult softball that we drag and line their fields for them. They pay us a certain amount every year to do that. And that was kind of out of self-defense because they were ruining the fields. But at that point, it takes one person to do just a line and drag the field, not counting mowing it. It's a half hour of field. So for the McCormick ones, that's an hour a day that we spend, just one person spends just lining the field and dragging it. Now mowing it, you can throw in another hour for the the fields. And like Jeff says, they have a finish mower, or we don't have a finish mower. So it makes a big difference.
Is there a way we could have them get the permit, like the reservation system, but maybe waive their fees for all the years that they're doing it?
I would recommend putting a certain number of hours mandatory to waive those fees. And I can tell you right now, whatever number you come up with, we're going way over it.
Well, it sounds like you're an asset with that. And, you know, we want kids to play. We want the ball fields to be used. But at the same time, we don't want the lease thing versus we want to go to the same for all around. We want to get rid of the lease thing, just go to reservation system for the whole thing. So,
That way other people can use
I don't know, is that something we could vote on? Is that something?
Well, we never stopped.
Waiving fees would be a decision of the city council.
Could we recommend it to the city?
You can make any recommendation that you would like.
I'm gonna make a recommendation that we give, that they fill out the reservation system, when we waive the trees for, say, X amount of hours besides, besides X amount of hours they have to work on the field, to just keep them maintained, keep them nice and playable.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
If there's no second, then the motion does not carry.
John, you've been there. You've been around this longer than I have.
I know what
There,
it's like to work on fields. I've put in thousands and thousands of hours on fields too, and never once would I have to pay for it. I do it because it's the pride of the field. That is my home during the game. This is my field. This is my home. My team's home. Take pride in your field. My baseball players, after every game, they're out there raking the field. You know, before practices, after practices, we're working on the field. We get our fields looking tip-top. Because you take pride in it.
You're right.
You have other people come from out of town, play in your field, you don't want to say, oh, this is crap.
Right.
one of,
And safety too, because there's some things that eventually they become unsafe to play on. So if we sell our tractor so we can afford to pay fees or whatever it ends up being, and we don't work on fields anymore, if the city's going toward a Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec system, I know that if you go up there, you pay to use their field, you walk on the field, you play, you don't have to touch it, it's drugged, it's chalked, it's ready to go, and when you're done, you walk off.
And how much do those leagues pay per team?
I'm not 100% sure.
roughly $400 for a recreational softball team.
I think it's per game situation. I
I'll say Portland, I don't know what it is now.
I
It'd be
think-
like $1,000 per team, and they'd be lined up, thinking not everybody would get in.
John, Tualatin Hills is $400 for a co-ed softball team.
Yeah, but again, they don't touch the fields.
Mhm.
And like when
One-
you and I played up there, game's over, they had somebody right after every game re-chalking the fields. They had personnel there constantly.
One
which
idea
we don't have.
you could look at, and the parks, I'm sure, and Public Works has discussed this somewhat at length, was to look at a private contractor to take care of certain fields. Maybe it's Campbell and McCormick that you hire somebody outside.
But that would be the city paying, so I guess what would be the cost benefit to having them continue to do the maintenance and then?
You would have somebody, so having a paid contractor would mean you have set standards that you set with that contractor. And whereas if something is not done correctly, you can go back on that contract that you specifically have with that person, as opposed to giving somebody a free fee and letting a community member take care of the fields. However, I know it's understanding of
I feel like you're constantly.
trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but liability wise,
Little girl goes out there and plays on our fields that we maintain, and it's not safe, and she ends up breaking her leg suing the city.
so there are some certain liability issues that the city is covered on, so to speak, just in general, for those kind of accidents. It doesn't stop somebody from who is drinking, playing, and getting hit in the head by a softball. But still, they sue the city, and we're going through that. So either way,
So you talk about a standard level of playability. I can guarantee you what we do is way above and beyond what you
I
guys
don't doubt that, Jeff.
can do. So hiring somebody and paying somebody when we're doing it, and just as in exchange, and I can guarantee you the amount that we pay in, it's gonna cost you, when I spoke with Rick, a landscaper to go out and work on stuff, you're not finding one for less than $30 an hour.
I understand that, but legally, technically, you should not be touching those fields unless you have signed a volunteer application. And if you don't have the volunteer application, you shouldn't be working in any of the parks. I'm just handling because I've had to deal with it with other cities and liability issues of people taking care of parks, not doing it. Oh, it's not the park's job. Oh, it's just John Smith who takes care of the field. Oh, okay, well, he doesn't have a license to do that. He shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. And the city ends up on the hook. That's what I'm worried about. I understand the work that you do, and I appreciate all the work and hard work that you and your staff do on those fields. But liability, it is a reason that the city is looking at this.
You're trying to fix something that's not broken, and it's gonna rob softball from hundreds of kids in our own community.
Well, it will baseball eventually.
No one person is big enough that if Jeff were to leave, that softball would crumble. I guarantee you that. I have plenty of people in the community. That want to play softball that don't believe they should have that they don't believe they have an opportunity to play in a certain group. So we're getting way off topic. We're here to talk about a lease agreement.
So can we reserve the field for 3 months on your reservation?
Yes, you
Yes.
can.
Yes.
And the reservation system is set up at sessions, so you have 3 options, 7 to 12, 12 to 5, and 5 to 10.
I do have a question. How far in advance can you go to reserve?
You can make the reservation anytime in advance. Right now, it's set up on the current system online as 7 days in advance, up to 180 days in advance. But those
So
numbers
you
can
wouldn't be
change.
able to, like at the beginning of
You can very easily
the
change
year-
those numbers to whatever you want them to
do
be.
it for,
I could do it 365 days, so you
okay.
could you could reserve a day today for next year.
okay,
That's up to the system. We can manually change that to be anything that's needed.
So would it be fair now to focus on the lease piece of it, the lease versus the exclusive use versus reservation, and to make a motion about that, and then maybe on our next meeting, discuss fees and how we handle keeping the fields
So
in shape? Like, how do we handle this going forward? Because obviously there's a lot.
So I can tell you right now, the fee schedule right now is set to be approved by the city council at their next meeting. So if you want to reassess those fees that was approved a couple months ago, I'm happy to bring them back to you. But I need to know now because we're setting the agenda.
We were talking about the potential to waive fees for people doing work, I think is a separate piece.
That's a very separate discussion. Yes. Yep.
So do we put that on the agenda for next time? Thoughts? Yeah. What do you guys think? How do you want to move forward? Yeah? Do we want to make a motion now to move forward with the reservation system? What do we want to do?
So the decision right now is, do you want to recommend to the city council to approve this lease, or do you want to recommend to the city that we do not do this lease? And these are specifically for the 3 Boise fields.
I think before they can answer that, they probably should read the entire thing, and so we can table that until next meeting. I understand, and I don't have an issue going with the reservation system, as long, like I said, my concern is, will the girls have a guaranteed place to play, and can we afford it? That's the thing.
Yes, the girls will have a guaranteed place to play, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Because we have a lot of volunteers, and they make all of our parks happen. So it's like, if you love your park, you give time and it takes to make the park the park. You know? And it's still ultimately a public park, and people can go there and do things to it. I mean, I base that all the time in public, you know?
so go ahead.
I have a question. I heard you guys talking a little bit about the fee schedule, and you said that McCormick and Campbell are at $10 per session.
$10 per session. per
So,
field.
so potentially, if we wanted exclusive use, it's $30 a day for every day we want 100% exclusive use.
Correct.
Okay, and then Boise is going to be at $5?
Boise would be set at $5 per field.
So
$5
just for
per
our-
field per day.
$5 per.
Per field, per
time
session.
slot. So in essence, if we only used one time slot, which we do use two, we bleed into two over there, it would cost, without weekends, it would cost a minimum, absolute bare minimum.
$30 a day.
$900 for our 3 months that we have not had to pay. And then, you know, we're spending more than that in tractor fuel and propane and weed killer and that doesn't include the man hours put into doing that maintenance and upkeep on our equipment. If you don't keep that stuff up, then it breaks. I certainly think that there has to be a method to, there has to be a way. My recommendation is if you put in X number of hours, we'll waive fees. If you don't put in X number of hours, we won't waive fees. And then other people who want to use other parks and stuff, guess what? They come in, they work on fields if they want their stuff fixed, or parks if they want their fees waived, whatever that is. It's free labor, and I understand the liability situation, but what I'm doing there, cutting grass and dragging fields and, you know, weeds and stuff like that, you know, there's really not a liability issue.
The liability issue is easy to fix by you signing a form,
Absolutely.
and maybe you create a Friends of program.
Yes.
Okay, well, with that issue in mind, every coach in every little league in every place works on the field. I guarantee you that. So does that mean we have to go through every league, every coach, every league, and get them to sign a volunteer form?
Anytime somebody works on a park, they
Because
should
they do work
sign a
every
volunteer
game.
waiver.
Every game.
They need to sign a volunteer waiver.
Yep, same thing.
That's been a city policy before I became here.
So that means that Little League will have to have a list of everybody, and
Howard, when you have people work, you have
them
signed
sign.
volunteer.
yeah.
So I know it's a pain in the ass. I understand. Okay.
Can we get a signature page attached to as an attached piece?
I don't see why that wouldn't.
Have all of our coaches sign it when
Yep.
they come in to sign up, because quite frankly, all the coaches should be raking.
Part
it
of
in.
registration.
Part of registration, we can have them sign that. I have
That's
no issue
easy
with
to
that
fix.
whatsoever.
Easy to do.
And figure out what, I think probably Thad's input would probably be important, on how many hours, you know, we need to log. And I could tell you right now, myself, the hours that I logged this year, which wasn't even close to it, was 145 and a half hours myself, field time, not running the league, not coaching. That's just on the tractor, on the field, rake in hand.
I don't have an easy answer for you. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you.
Because like I said,
So, but
every practice,
if I want to kind of steer you towards the topic, though.
Can we put something on the agenda, you guys wanna put something on the agenda for next time to talk about the theme park? For that?
yes, I would like,
Do we still wanna move forward with the reservation system?
yes, I think we do.
So someone needs to make a motion, and someone would need to second it if you wanna move forward with the reservation.
I'll make a motion that we talk about, we move forward with the reservations of the league.
Okay. All those in favor?
And I'd like to put on the next agenda that we talk about maybe the coaches and teams that we,
Great, yeah. Would you guys be willing to come next time? and
Yeah, when is
talk
the
about
next meeting?
that? It's always the second Monday of the month.
September 9th.
And maybe if you can just come and be prepared to talk about like how much time you guys are putting in, and then we can look at some stuff on our side. We can have a conversation specific to that where everybody's prepared to talk about that.
You guys can come up with the amount of hours that would require to waive the fees, or maybe a lesser number of hours that are required to reduce the fees
Yeah,
even.
I think we wanna talk about it more, it's just, it's already 5:40.
Right.
Yes.
Over 45, 50 minutes talking about this, and I feel like
And I appreciate your time.
But,
we don't just want to.
right. Also on that, you know, the proposal earlier about waiving park fees for 501, or for 501c3 or whatever nonprofit organizations, maybe that just is included in all of this, and you can get some more volunteers to maintain a trail or pick up garbage in a park for an hour.
I would like to
So-
point out too, it's not, it wouldn't be a dollar, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't, under the reservation system, you wouldn't have to put a dollar figure on it. It would just be, hey, here's our schedule, this is what we need for field time, okay. And if you put in this number of hours, this is what this will cost, so, something. But real quick, I just wanna, I wanna point out that even Doug said, quote, "Why charge someone who's maintaining the park?" And I can appreciate that. And so if they are a 501c3, and if I had access, I would print you, here's our determination letter right there. And so,
It's just a conversation that I think we all need to be prepared to talk about that.
Yes.
And here we just kind of got thrown into it with this other
I understand,
stuff.
I understand.
And so I think we need to table it, move it to another meeting.
I'm not gonna be here next month, so, we go to October. I will get a vacation scheduled, so.
We have to cancel it.
Denied, vacation denied. I intend to stay married.
So,
So next on the agenda is softball fields.
no, that's pretty much already done.
That's it.
We're pretty much, we bled into that. I don't wanna take any more of your time right now, but, so then we'll plan on being here September 9th, and in between then, you guys are going to present the idea to city council.
I don't know that
Make a recommendation.
The recommendation from the consensus here was to not move forward on a lease agreement that you proposed. So whether it is a discussion item for the agenda, that would be up to the mayor and the city administrator.
So we made a motion to go with the reservation system, not
Over the
lease.
lease.
And then on the next agenda, we'll talk about fees.
Correct. Okay.
So that's, yeah.
I completely understand that.
So, but Jeff, the fee schedule that they're referring to will go to city council at the next meeting, which is the 21st, I think. Yeah, August 21st. So the fee schedule would be proposed there. But any discussion that you have at a later meeting to adjust fees or reduce fees or whatever that may be, that can still be played out and figured out between everyone here.
Yeah, we would discuss it here, and then we would make a motion, and then, like, to propose something for the city council, and then it would go to city council, and then it would be up to us. That's kind of the process.
I'm gonna give you my number, I'd like to know how many hours
Okay, so we're gonna move on to old business. Does anyone have anything under old business that you wanna discuss?
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Nothing? Great. Counselor's report.
I'm passing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have pictures of the updates?
I will second that. That BMX track looks fantastic.
Thanks, Mindy. Mindy.
I do. No, some little girl hit that, had her driver's license for a couple weeks, took out the fence, got the fence company, had to go through the insurance, all this stuff. Well, now the fence company's gonna come fix it, so. But that BMX track came out much better than I ever imagined it could. I didn't see it, I couldn't see that vision, but the guy that worked on it just absolutely did a fantastic job. Mhm.
Just updates on, I could say Mount Hill, I'm still, better. Just because we've been talking about Friends Group so much, I decided to save it up a little bit for swimming in the park. If it goes on the reservation system. We also sprayed for poison oak. We can waive some of this fees if he's going to volunteer.
They're just all upset. Just focused on the lease, which is to me outdated. I don't agree with that.
Good job.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on the bench this fall when it's cooler.
Yeah, if you can get a hole, if you can get a couple holes.
I just want it to be sooner out if I'm gonna be involved in it. I'd all do it more than 50.
And then there's we'd have to bring a machine to pack concrete, probably, if, depending on how big the slab has to be, or if it just can be a bucket, that's not a problem. But, yeah. That's what I'm hoping for too, but I'm hoping we don't have to do a slab. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to pick on you, but man, I know you've been involved in it.
Everyone.
I never won one. I never won it either.
Exactly.
There's other things too that kind of annoy me.
But I didn't mind it. I got it.
How you doing?
All right, all right.
I heard the track is beautiful.
Turned out
Heard
far
your
better than
event
I
went really well.
envisioned. Yeah, we had a nice turnout. Everybody loved it. And the one thing that didn't happen, any kids wrecking, you know, it was safe.